Here we have an Athearn GP38-2. I bought this about 5 or 6 years ago as a set for my youngest son. When we bought it, it was your standard DC. For the past couple of years, we've run it quite regularly. Never had any issues or problems with it. It's probably one of my better performing locos. I know there's some people out there that have had problems or issues with Athearn, but I've never had any problems with this one. Don't let the road name scare you or deter you, because underneath that plastic shell is your standard Athearn motor, flywheels, drive assembly. About a year ago, I decided to make the switch to DCC, and just like most people, when they make the jump, you really don't know a whole lot about it. You try and find out as much as you can. So I did a lot of research, read up on not only DCC but sound decoders also, and not knowing much about it, spent a couple of weeks trying to figure out which route to go. I gotta give credit where credit's due. I watched a lot of videos on DCC install, and probably some of the best videos I came across and watched and learned a lot was from Tommy. Tommy022481 is his actual channel, but like I say, I gotta give credit where credit's due. Learned a lot by watching his videos, and if you want to go check out and see what Tommy's got, he's in my list of subscriptions, so if you're not sure, if you don't know what you're doing, Tommy's got some good pointers, some good help. But what I ended up doing is I decided I was going to go with Soundtraxx Tsunamis. So for this locomotive here, I purchased a Soundtraxx Tsunami TSU-1000. You can see here by the paperwork, I got this out of the drawer. It's a EMD 645 decoder. It's got the sounds for a GP38-2. You can probably buy these just about any of your local hobby shops or on the internet. I'm really satisfied with the performance behind them. I've purchased a couple more since then. For the sound, to go with the decoder, I bought a Railmaster Hobbies 14mm by 36mm speaker with enclosure. If you haven't done any sound decoder installs yet, probably the most important thing is having an enclosure for your speaker. The plastic shell of the locomotive is not enough to create that baffle for the sound waves. You've really got to have an enclosure for it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the loco apart here because I've already done the install, and but I'll show you what I ended up with after I got done. Before I did the install, especially since this is the first one I've ever done, I wasn't sure how much room there was between the shell and the motor. So I needed to figure out a way to make sure that there was enough room for the sound decoder and the speaker. So what I did is I took a picture of the locomotive. And as you can see here by this first photo, it's just a standard pic of the locomotive sitting on my workbench. The second picture, as you see here, is without the shell, and the chassis and the motor and the flywheel assembly. And after I took both pictures, one with the shell on and one with the shell off, I merged them, and you can use any standard photo cropping program. And what I did is I made the shell image transparent. That way I could see how much space there was between the motor and the flywheels and the bottom of the shell. And once I did that, and as you can see from the photo or the image, it gave me an idea how much space I had where to lay the stuff out. Another thing I wanted to take into consideration when I was doing this install is, we know how sensitive decoders are to heat. So I wanted to make sure that not only was there enough room to mount the items, I wanted to make sure that my decoder was as far away from a heat source as possible, so that there would be less chance of heating up. And as you can see here from the final install, this is how I laid out the items. First of all, with an Athearn, you need to remove that power bar that runs between the front and the rear truck. But it's your standard basic wiring. You can see the red wires are for the power pickup. On an Athearn, the black wire, as you can see, and I'm going to use a white golf tee here to help point some of these things out, is that black wire there is the ground. And what I did is I soldered that to the frame. You can see here in the top of the shell where I mounted the items, I have the decoder on the rear end of the locomotive, and what I did is I mounted it to the top of the shell using double-sided tape. I also have the capacitor here mounted. There's a nice little space after I got that decoder up inside that shell. The capacitor there also has two-sided or double-sided tape on it so that it stays in place. The black capacitor here, the small one, that's actually the capacitor for the LED lights that I installed for it. I took out the standard light and installed that LED light, and they come with the brand that I buy comes with a capacitor. You can see on the forward end of the cab here is where I ended up mounting the speaker, which fit right in place, and actually that speaker helps hold that LED light in place. If you notice, the speaker, double-sided tape mounted to the underside of the roof, is facing down, and what happens when it's operating, those sound waves go down through the front portion of the trucks, and it adds as an additional baffle also, even though it has its own speaker enclosure around it. You know, as with any DCC install, you want to make sure that your motor's isolated from the frame. That way you're not shorting out or burning things up. But this is pretty much what I ended up with after my install. And you can see I've got slack in the wires there. I wanted enough slack so that I could pull the shell off without any difficulty. But another important thing when you're doing these installs, and a benefit of using double-sided tape, is things stay in place. You don't want any of these parts falling down on top of your motor or the flywheels, or even the top portion, especially in an Athearn here, top portion of the front and the rear trucks, because anything that falls down is going to bind up the movement of those items, and you're end up burning either your motor or your decoder out or something. So make sure your wires there's no more slack in them than necessary, and make sure that the parts that you mount inside are secure, because you don't want anything to bind up the movement of that locomotive. What we'll do here is we'll go ahead and put her back together. A couple of clips of that plastic shell, she'll be back in place, and we'll put her on the layout and let you hear what it sounds like. Okay, here we are back in the layout. What I'm going to do is I'm going to fire this up, give you a chance to hear it. Like I said before, the speaker that I used was from Railmaster Hobbies. It is not a bass reflex speaker. It is just a standard speaker, and if you're going to get a speaker, I would suggest going with a bass reflex. They sound a little bit better. They sound a little bit more clear. There's nothing wrong with the sounds from this locomotive, but a bass speaker is a little bit better than your standard one. Standard startup sequence for a Soundtraxx Tsunami sound decoder. Like I said in the earlier part, I installed a LED light from the front. To see the LED light flashing there, I programmed the CVs for the hyperlight effect. So that's basically your figure 8 configuration for the headlight. I also configured the automatic notching for the motor revs. I've also configured the automatic bell set points for the sound decoder. I have my bell set to come on at 1 mile per hour and to shut off at 10 miles per hour. And of course those are scale models per hour. They're not what it actually equates to be. So as I increase the throttle, the bell will come on, and when I get above 10 miles per hour on my speed setting, it'll go ahead and shut off. Now that train's about, that locomotive is about 5 feet away from the camera. You can, sounds still pretty distinctive. But you can hear the sound from this Soundtraxx Tsunami is still relatively acceptable. I'm pretty pleased with it, especially for my first sound decoder install. Well, that's pretty much it. Just wanted to show you what I did to install a Soundtraxx Tsunami and speaker, and say I'm pretty proud of my accomplishment, especially it being my first decoder install. I think it turned out pretty well. So, as always, thanks for watching my channel. I appreciate it. Penn Central 99 signing out.